In the world, there are many famous brands, Apple, Amazon, and Ferrari is one of the biggest. Now, when Ferrari started, it was founded by a man called Enzo Ferrari, and this car fondly named after the founder himself. This is the Enzo Ferrari, and welcome to the Hypercar Hunt. In 2002, Ferrari teamed up with Pininfarina to design the Enzo, one of the most beautiful and most important Ferraris potentially ever made, and I would say this car has earned itself in hypercar history. The heartbeat of the Ferrari Enzo then, the 6-litre naturally aspirated V12, producing 660 brake horsepower, 3.6 seconds to 60 and a top speed of over 215 miles an hour, this car in the early 2000s would have been something to behold. Now the car sits, okay, maybe top speed isn't as fast as some of the other hypercars, but you mention a Ferrari Enzo anywhere in the world and it goes down as one of the most iconic things on four wheels known to mankind. Fun fact for you, both the front and the rear wheels are 19-inch. The difference though, 245 width tyres on the front and 345 width tyres on the rear. The rims are made out of the same material that wheel makers make rims out of. Interesting, nevertheless. And this car has actually had an upgrade that Enzo owners have been really struggling with. Tyres, because originally they were on Michelin Supersports. These are actually on Cup 2s because no one could get Supersports. So this car is now going to drive a hell of a lot better than it did back in the day. Now the exterior of this car is actually finished in a very rare colour. One of only 24 Enzos were finished in Rosso Scuderia, and believe it or not, 2 of the 24 cars, one belonged to the Pope, that's right, the same white hat wearing, Bible worshipping man that you wouldn't expect to be seen running around in a Ferrari Enzo, and the other one belonged to, well, probably the most famous Formula 1 driver in the world, Michael Schumacher. Taking a step inside the Ferrari Enzo then, one of the most iconic design features on this car, the doors. The interior on the Ferrari Enzo is remarkably sparse, whether it be the very small instrument cluster that you can only see the bottom quarter of, or the fact that just under the instrument cluster there are massive holes. I think Ferrari did kind of a cool job, whether it be deliberately or non-deliberately, making this feel like a race car, but also like a road car. You've got the nice leather bucket seats, but then you've got the race harnesses. You've got the nice leather steering wheel, but then you've also got big holes everywhere. It's like, there's some cool features about this. One of the most amusing things, I think, is the fact that it's got manually winding windows, because for £4 million, why on earth would you have a window motor? In terms of infotainment then, well, there isn't any. Where there might have been a radio, there is air conditioning controls, of which there is no air conditioning. There's a start button, hazards, there is the parking light, which there's its own button for, don't really get that, but fair enough. Fog lights and your wing mirror adjusters. Now, one thing I do hate is a strong word, but severely dislike is the fact that on a Ferrari Enzo, the wing mirrors are different sizes. Now, I know that there are some great designers to do a Ferrari and Pininfarina, but that's just wrong. Storage and usability then, well, when it comes to storage on the inside of this Enzo, it's pretty much vacant. There's a little bit of space in the center console here and here, but there's netting behind the seats, but I'm in a driving position and that's flush with the bulkhead, so there's no space back there. There is no glove locker here at all. I mean, there's a footwell, but let's have a look at the frunk to see if there's anything there. I actually haven't seen the frunk of an Enzo before, so we're going to find out at the same time. Okay, so if we have a little look under the frunk then, yeah, that's to be expected. Not the most amount of space, but you could probably fit, I don't know, probably an Aldi meal deal in there, something of that nature. What I do think is quite cool though, you can see all of the hydraulic pumps and all the hydraulic bits for the front lift. You can also see a very clean air filter, so I'm guessing this car has just had a service because that is sheet white. Now, aside from the tub and the rear clam, underneath the front bonnet is one of the few places you can actually see the body's exposed carbon fibre, and actually I really love it. I love the big checkered carbon. Everyone always sees tiny thin carbon everywhere nowadays, but seeing the old school bigger stuff is always very cool. Now, in order to open the colossal clam of the rear Enzo, I'm going to need my beautiful brunette assistant, John. Thank you very much, sir. If we can just open this up, you'll see why you need two people. So this doesn't have any gas struts, and what that means is you've got to hold this up, take this that just sits in your engine bay, slot it in between the suspension work, which is no small feat, and then manage to guide that, twist it, and then it locks in. Yeah, I have about as much faith in that as I did in my last relationship. This Enzo is believed to be one of the only Enzos with a painted rear diffuser out of the factory. Personally, I absolutely love it. While we're back here then, we should probably fire up the gorgeous V12 and hear that symphony. Now this car is absolutely iconic. There is no other way of putting it, but here comes the part where you guys love to slate me, the ratings. We're talking about performance, desirability, value, and usability. Let's start with usability then, the lowest scoring on this car, because unfortunately, now yes, okay, you could drive this a lot, but I'm talking about if you wanted to go, you and a passenger, to France from here, what could you take with you? Well, you could take a pair of knickers and maybe a toothbrush and toothpaste, but that's about it. There is no space inside the cabin, and in the front, there is maybe enough for like one person's day bag, but certainly not two. So usability, it's a bit of a tricky one, but I think it would have to be rated a 3 out of 10. Desirability though, that is an interesting one because a lot of you guys have been commenting on a lot of the videos on here saying that I've been scoring this unfairly, but what you need to remember is the desirability, like a Ferrari Enzo is without a doubt one of the most desirable Ferraris out there. There is no questioning of that. But if you look at it as numbers against other hypercars, in theory, if you didn't know what car it was, it wouldn't necessarily score as high as something that had less numbers built. Simple of. But I still think the desirability should be evenly scored between the amount produced and how many people want a Ferrari Enzo. So the people in the 2000s who grew up with this as a poster car are going to be paying a lot of money, which we're going to get to in a minute when we get to value. But in terms of desirability, I'm going to say this is a 7 out of 10. In terms of performance though, we have to give it a rating. Now considering the car was early 2000s, and it was still pushing the envelope in terms of speed, and also handling was a feature on it. They wanted to make sure that this wasn't just, you know, a show pony. And as long as your name isn't Eddie Griffin, the car will go round corners very well. So I'm going to rate this car a strong 7 out of 10 for performance. Now in terms of value then, this Enzo is a fascinating case study. See, it started its life in the early 2000s, starting price of just under £700,000. Now the car sits anywhere between 3.5 and 4 million, and it can fetch even more if it's a special colour like one of the silvers or one of the blacks. This car, as mentioned before, is one of only 24 in Rosso Scuderia. So this is probably second to the Pagani Zonda, the highest appreciating in terms of percentages out of the modern hypercar world. Now that is a fairly serious thing. So do I base the value off what it was to what it is now, or what it is now to what it could be? I personally think you can combine those two with this car. So I'm going to rate this an 8.5 out of 10. So then that is a brief overlook of the iconic Ferrari Enzo, a car that I've kind of been surrounded by for many years. When we first started the collection, when we started having car events, I remember an Enzo turning up to our house and the number plate was Enzo. I now realise it was a show plate, but I remember looking at this being in complete awe, and 20 years later, I still look at it in complete awe. So congratulations, Ferrari. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and a very special thank you to two people, the Pegg Collection for letting us film this awesome car, and also Kiklo Spaces. The guys there have been so hospitable, so I cannot say thank you enough. Their links will be down below, and I'm having to say that because they're sitting right there. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.